Good evening. So glad that you're here with me today. And I'm delighted that you are here too. This is our usual live stream show every Monday evening. And we're here and raring to go. And today we're going to talk about something really important to know about. And that is the idea of supply. So as you join the call, let's be thinking about, what does supply mean to you? What is it that you understand by the idea of supply? And in particular, hijackal or narcissistic supply. But because you may have had a parent or a partner or an ex or maybe a coworker or a sibling that is using you as their supply or has used you as their supply. So you want to be really aware of what this all means. So please sign in as you come in. Tell us that you're here. Love to know who's here as usual. And we'll get the party started very, very soon. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, as you know, and I'm known as the Relationship Help Doctor. I have 2 podcasts every week, which you are more than welcome to listen to wherever you like to get your podcasts. One is called Emotional Savvy. The other is called Save Your Sanity. And so if you want more than what I have on YouTube, by all means go and enjoy the podcasts. And love to have you sign in. Tell me where you're from so that we know what parts of the country and the world we have represented here. I'm speaking to you from sunny San Diego, and it truly is a beautiful day here. I know that in different parts of the country we're having vastly different weather systems, so I'm just very happy to be here in the sunshine, which is all usually quite normal. So that's going on. Who's here? And just put in the chat where you're from. That would be great. And get a sense. I know that I have clients all over the world because I work through video conferencing. So it's quite possible that there are people here from different parts of the world as well. And it's good to know that we all have the same kinds of problems, no matter where we are in the world. We have similar kinds of problems. And our relationships run the same way, no matter what our culture, no matter what the norms of maybe a spiritual discipline are or a cultural is, we're still going to have these same personality issues. And they are going to affect our relationships in the same way. There may be different expectations in certain situations, and certainly we can talk about those. It's so important. So I'm glad that you're here, and I'm just going to start because I like to honor those who come on time. So tonight we're talking about how to keep ourselves out of the narcissistic supply chain. And for those of you who may be familiar with the term supply, just think what that means to you. And I'm going to give you a few ideas to kick us off. Supply to people, hijackals, any kind of hijackal, in particular narcissistic hijackals, supply are people who provide things to the hijackal. So these might be things like constant source of admiration and attention and focus and approval and validation and adoration. And what the hijackal wants is more than one person who thinks they are the best thing since sliced bread, the most important person in the room, the smartest person in the room, the person on the top of the food chain and the top of the pile in every possible way. And we can get pulled into being their supply. And I want to talk about that tonight with you. And this idea, I want to give a few ideas so that we can have a rich conversation about this before we start answering questions, but do put your questions in the chat as you think of them so we don't lose any valuable questions. So just a few things. Why do hijackals like us? Well, it could be that we, their supply, are the people who want to be liked. We want to be wanted. We want to be needed. We want to be approved of. And so a hijackal will do that for a little while. And so we make great supply because our desire to please, our desire to live up to someone's expectations or to dance to someone else's tune makes them very happy because they get to call the tune, right? And so we become very, very good supply for them. Now, maybe we've had some interesting things in our makeup and we have become a little dependent or codependent. And a narcissistic hijackal loves that about us because they can then gaslight us and tell us what we think and feel, and hopefully we'll believe that. Now, that's a big deal. If you understand the term gaslighting, I'll just give you a little definition of it. It means that someone else wants to tell you what your reality is, what you think, what you feel. They're not interested in what you have to say about it. They'll tell you what you think and feel and the way it is. Regardless of what you can see, they will tell you the way they want you to see it. And that's what we call gaslighting. And so hijackals love to have supply that they can gaslight. And they like supply that is looking for approval. So if you are looking for approval and they can withhold it or give it to you, they're in heaven. You are the perfect supply. So some things that we need to know about being supply is that you are not an object. And you have to be very, very clear that you don't allow anyone to treat you as an object. Does that make sense? Because a hijackal wants to treat you as supply. That thing, that person, if you like, but that object, that thing that adores me. That spotlight that always shines on me, that spotlight that wants nothing for him or herself, but will always make me look and feel better. So big deal, that you understand. And as you are going to keep yourself out of being supply, you need to have a deep understanding that you are not an object. And you will not be treated as an object. So that's a big thing. And another big thing that I want to talk about tonight is don't allow yourself to be seen as an acquisition, that I can get him or her, that it has to be mutual. It has to be two people, not one person holding the power and the other person longing to be wanted. And if you happen to be longing to be wanted or longing to be needed or longing to be approved of or validated by a hijackal, you become part of the supply chain. And it's not that you do that wittingly. You don't get up in the morning and say, how can I be that for somebody else? Of course not. But you might have been raised to be that. You may have been raised to keep hijackals happy. Anybody in here have hijackal parents? Where what you needed or wanted or how you felt or what you thought didn't matter. It was only when you made them look good and that you stayed out of their way and you weren't a bother to them that you got any knowledge of who you are and how you were useful. I mean, that happens when you have hijackal parents. I had hijackal parents, 2 of them. Both of them were hijackals. Many times only one of them is a hijackal and the other one is a bit of a pretzel and a doormat. But in my case, I had 2 different kinds of hijackal parents. So how could I keep 2 different people completely happy? Not easy at all. And I was an only child, so it was my job. There was nobody else there. So Alchemy asked the question, if your parents are narcissistic, how are you supply? Well, you were created to be their supply. You were brought into the world to be their supply. When you have a narcissistic or a hijackal parent, hijackals are my name for the behavior, the people who exhibit the behaviors and the patterns, traits, and cycles of people who have narcissistic, passive-aggressive, histrionic, antisocial, borderline personality traits. And so I just put them all under that title, hijackal, because we're going to have to deal with their behaviors, not their psychological diagnoses. They'll probably never go and get one. And don't you bother trying to be an armchair psychologist. Know that there are hijackals. They behave in certain ways, and you can learn from that. So this question of alchemies is, if your parents are narcissistic, how are you supply? Well, that's the reason they had you. So that you would be supplied to them, so that you would be the person that adored them, that needed them, and that they could then have power over you. And no, they didn't think that when they had you. That's not what was in their mind. That is just the way it turned out. That's the way that their whole pattern ran. And so that's what you were there for. And you know that that's true if you had a hijackal parents, because you were validated for when you made them look good, when they could be proud of you, when they got reflected glory, right? So alchemy, you can probably respond to that. If you had narcissistic parents, you were at your very best and you were appreciated the most when you were making your parents look good. And if you had particular needs or wants, or maybe you were ill, or maybe something was going on that you could not always be there to give them that, things could go terribly sideways. So there is that issue. We're not an object, we're not an acquisition, but hijackal parents have us in order to have the reflected glory of us. And one of the things that happens with hijackal parents, and often they don't set out to be parents because they're too self-centered to really be a parent, but many of them do become parents in order to have that reflected glory, to have these children that make them look good. And you know about that if you've ever been around them, because when you are not making them look good, the wrath of the world is upon you, that you are just the scum of the earth. And when you're making them look good, you're the best thing since sliced bread. But there's a problem, because when you're a tiny baby, of course, everybody loves a tiny baby. So a narcissistic parent is getting reflected glory all the time. How cute. How old is the baby? All the questions that we ask. And then the child in their brain development gets to this first stage of individuation, and they realize that they're not attached to their parent anymore. They're separate people. And then as they're getting language, then the first big problem comes up, because the child learns to say no to the narcissistic parent. And boom, the battle's on. So alchemy said, I feel used and beat up. Yeah, used, misused, and abused, I'm sure, because that's what happens. And you're constantly vigilant. I don't know if you had that experience, but after a while, most people who have hijackal parents become vigilant, if not hyper vigilant. How do I keep them happy? What do I need to do? What do they want? What are their expectations? Are they paying attention to me right now? What do I need to do to stay out of their way? I mean, you become like bobbing and weaving all the time in order to just maintain some equilibrium and stay out of their way. Or if you're possibly able to please them, you want to do that because that's the only time that you're going to get true validation from them. And so I hope that answered your question, Alchemy. That's how narcissistic supply you are if you're born into a family of hijackals. So the things that I was saying was, maybe we have because we want to stop being part of the supply chain to the narcissist, to the hijackal, we have to look at ourselves first and say, what are our needs that are being met in that situation? As I said, maybe we have a need to be wanted, maybe you have a need to be liked, a need to be approved of, a need to be accepted or acknowledged or known or seen. And then what do we have to do to keep ourselves out of that position is, first of all, we have to recognize we are not an object. They treat us like an object. They look at us with the curiosity that they would look at an object. But we are not objects. We're human beings. We change. We have feelings. We have desires, needs, wants, thoughts, feelings. How very inconvenient of us to be changeable, to be variable. They don't like that because they're the ones who have whims and changes and wants and needs, not you. So they don't like that. And the second thing that we're not is an acquisition. We are not something to be acquired, something that's supposed to be like buying them a spotlight. No, we're not an acquisition. And the fact that we are real and human and have needs can be very, very difficult for them. So these are important things. And all right, so Purple Belt asked the question, how do I know if I'm ready to date? Whoo! Big, big question and a good one. We'll talk about that. I had 3 different coffee dates with non-second dates. Now, she says, skeptical, hypervigilant, it all seems so passive-aggressive. Okay, need a little more information there. So you had 3 different coffee dates with no second dates. And are you saying that you felt skeptical, hypervigilant, and the other people seemed passive-aggressive? Can you just fill in a few of the blanks there, and I'll come back to that question. But I'll talk about your first question. How do I know if I'm ready to date? Well, first of all, you'll have to have done some work to heal. Because in order to be ready to date, you don't ever want to be part of anybody's supply chain again, right? And you don't want to be hurt and used again. And you don't want to be in an imbalanced relationship. So I just want to say a few things about the creation of a healthy relationship. And then we can continue to answer that question. There are 3 hallmarks of a healthy relationship, in my opinion. Any healthy relationship, whether it's at work, at home, in a love relationship, in a parent-child, in an adult-child relationship. It's different when your children are younger. These 3 things are very important, that there is equality, there is reciprocity, and there is mutuality. So that both people have equal rights. They are honored and respected equally as equals. That what's good for one is good for the other. And so there is that equality. I think you understand what I mean by equality. And reciprocity means that I will do for you, you will do for me. We know that we walk together, we balance each other, we collaborate, we have each other's back, we walk by each other's side. We'll pick up the pieces occasionally when the other person's troubled or down. And we have that. It's not a scorecard, it's not a tit-for-tat situation, but in a healthy relationship we have reciprocity. One person is not doing everything and the other person doing nothing. There is reciprocity. Like I said, no scoreboards, no tit for tat, no keeping track. We just reciprocally help each other. But the big one of the 3 things in a healthy relationship, equality, reciprocity, the last one is the big one, and that's mutuality. Now, mutuality is sometimes not completely understood, so I want to just take a moment to help with that. And when I wrote this book, Kaizen for Couples, it says it's for couples and it's great for couples, but it's for anybody because it's about having healthy relationships. You can get it on Amazon, or you can download it on Kindle, or you can buy the book on Amazon. But on page 121, I talk a lot about mutuality in this book, and I just want to read a couple things to you because on page 121, this is a pretty book, it's got color inside, and it says true partnership is desirable. Mutuality is the key ingredient. Even when things are difficult, mutuality sustains you as a team, both willing and able to meet challenges together. And mutuality requires active, sustained interest in each other as different, complex, and fascinating individuals. So mutuality means I want to know you. I want to know you today. I don't want to make assumptions about you. I want to know how you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you need, what you want. You are my person. We have that mutual interest in each other, that we are a team, that we are connected in that way, that we are keeping up with each other. We allow each other to change and grow and develop, to make mistakes and to pick ourselves up, and the reciprocity and equality will help with that. But in that mutuality, it magnifies your attunement and your responsiveness to each other. It's that deep emotional intimacy that we long for. And so we need to have that in a healthy relationship. And you won't have that in a relationship with a hijackal of any stripe. You just won't have that because it's an imbalance. It's always an imbalance. So I wanted to put those hallmarks of healthy relationships in there: equality, reciprocity, and mutuality, so we understand that. So back to the question of how do I know if I'm ready to date? I'm ready to date when I feel healthy, when I feel as though I am not going to be desperately looking for somebody, that I need somebody, that I am aware that I would like to have someone, I want someone in my life, but I don't need them, and I'm not on a time frame, and that I have come to peace with the fact that I know that I can trust myself to see the red flags. And that's why you have to do your own work. Many times people will come to work with me after they've been in this situation. I have a program, 2 programs. One's called Healing After Abuse. The other was called Love Beyond Abuse. And in order to get to the place of love beyond abuse, you have to do your own work so that you don't fall into this trap of being in someone else's supply chain again. So if you were skeptical and hypervigilant, perp, about when you were on these dates, just check with yourself. Was I overly skeptical and hypervigilant? Because those are strong words. Or was I simply very aware and not just going to be taken in by somebody? Were you overly, or was it just a good, healthy reaction to, I'm just looking, thank you? When you go on a date, it's just an opportunity to shop. If someone says to you, can I help you? Are you looking for something in particular when you're in a store? You often say, no, I'm just looking, thank you. Well, that's what you're doing when you're initially dating. I'm just looking. And I invite you, when you're thinking of dating or you are dating, is to ask yourself this question. Find yourself in this place that you are not there to make the other person like you. You are auditioning the other person. It makes a huge difference to your attitude when you go on a date. You are just watching the other person be. You're showing some interest in them, and you're observing whether they have interest in you. You're very much an auditioner. Am I finding this pleasant? Am I feeling drawn towards this person? What do I observe? Do I like it? Do I not like it? And then you just go away. You don't have to worry about another date. You just simply audition. And it doesn't have to go anywhere. And if it does go somewhere, all right, then you continue the audition. But what happens when we've been attracted to hijackals, or hijackals have been attracted to us, it's because there's a need. And so we want to please them. We want to make them happy. We want to take care of them. We want to nurture them. We want them to like us. And yeah, that's normal. We all want to be liked. But maybe it's a little more than that, because if we are attracted to, or they're finding us attractive, it usually means that somewhere in our makeup there are some deficits. And that deficit may or may not be something that you want to change. I mean, sometimes we're just people of very goodwill, and we're willing to go the extra mile, and we go way too many miles out of our way and bend over backwards way too far, and we end up becoming a pretzel or a doormat, and it was so subtle we didn't realize we got there. So it's not a fault of any kind, but let us learn from that. So very important. So Purple Belt says, it's been almost 2 years since 25 years of a covert hijackal marriage. Of course, he's been living with a person. Sure he has, because he needs a supply. Hijackals are not going to go without supply. And know this about hijackals. They have supply that's active. They have supply that's passive. They have supply that's being groomed. They have supply that are prospects. They have all kinds of supply. That's why hijackals flirt. That's why hijackals turn on the charm. It's sort of, can I get a little more supply so that if this doesn't go well, I've got something waiting in the wings. Maybe they groom somebody to, have coffee with occasionally, or it's just a business arrangement, they tell you, but they're grooming some supply. Or maybe they're going online and making sure that they have some prospects lined up, but they will always have supply. And that's why your hijackal is living with somebody, of course. But when you are starting to date, you don't want another one of those, do you? I know you don't. So you just want to be auditioning people. You want to be in the thought pattern of, how do I like this person? How do I feel when I'm sitting here? Have it be about you in the beginning. You certainly show interest. Don't be haughty and aloof and I'm here to judge you. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what's going on in your head. Instead of, I wonder how they like me, you're saying, I'm considering how I like them. Does that make sense to you? Yes, maybe it's healthy, knowledgeable observation now. I just don't like the game so far. Good ideas. I don't need to be liked. Great. That's healthy. You don't need to be liked. It's nice to be liked, but you want to be liked by the right people that you value, people that you honestly care because you value who they are. Then those are healthy relationships. But for some people, they're just very, very desirous of being approved of, and so they're good hijackal bait. That's, they're just perfect for the picking for a hijackal. So very important. And please, everybody, do let me know you're here. Sign in, put your name in the chat, and feel free to add comments or questions, because that's what this show is all about, is giving you the opportunity to be part of the conversation. And while I'm just adding to that, know too about my podcasts, Emotional Savvy and Save Your Sanity. Wherever you like to go to get podcasts, you can definitely find those two shows, Emotional Savvy and Save Your Sanity. Save Your Sanity is to help people who have been with hijackals and other toxic relationships. And Emotional Savvy is about our relationships, wise relationships with anyone. So very important. And please, while you're here, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do that. Then you'll always know when there's a new video ready, or you'll get a reminder about Monday night's show. So we do want to be in healthy observation, as Purple Belt has spoken about, because we don't want to be in that waiting for approval stage. I've mentioned on a couple of my podcasts before that one of the big moments in my life was after both my parents had died. I was making photograph albums for my 3 children, and I took the photographs that my parents had had, and then I took all the photographs I had, and I made, books for the children. And at the end of that very long day, I was sitting on my yoga room floor because I used to own a yoga retreat. And I'd had everything spread out over, a large piece of carpet. And I thought, one of the things my mother always said to me, and she was the second one to pass, she'd always said to me, do you know it's a good thing you're smart because you're fat and ugly? She really liked to say that to me. So I thought, all right, while I have these photographs all spread out, I'm going to go and look for evidence of fat and ugly. Now, I may be delusional, but I went and looked and I couldn't find a whole lot of evidence of fat or ugly. And that caused me to think, I didn't really like my mother. I didn't approve of the way my parents behaved or their mindsets. My mother was very racist and she was always angry and she was critical and judgmental. And my father was extremely passive on the outside, but furious on the inside. But I had my mother in mind as I was sitting there, and I thought, I didn't approve of who she was at all. I sort of loved her because she was my mother, but it was a very strange tie. And yet I didn't approve of how she behaved in the world at all. And then it hit me that all my life I had been waiting for her approval. And I remember 3 days before she died, she wanted to die at home. So I was looking after her and I was holding her hand and I said to her, Mom, you've never told me that you loved me. And she looked down her nose, and I might have told you this story before. She looked down her nose and she said, I know. And that was the end of that conversation. So back to the yoga room floor, and I'm realizing that I didn't approve of her in any way. And then the penny dropped. And that was the last time that I had to think about that, because I realized that I was waiting for the approval of someone of whom I didn't approve. Right? I was waiting for my mother's approval, and I didn't like who she was, so why would I care if she approved of me? So when we are in a relationship where we are part of the supply, we just become a person who is looking for the approval of a hijackal. We don't want to be there at all, right? Simply don't want to be there. And we don't want to place ourselves in that situation ever again. So in response to your dating questions, Purple Belt, you want to be the one who is there deciding whether or not this person is someone you want in your life, not the other way around. And you can do that in a very friendly, interested, neutral, and benign manner, in a very respectful way. But the mindset is, I'm deciding whether I like this person. I'm not trying to make them like me. Very, very important for us to stay out of this supply chain. So Alchemy says, when you've been used by narc parents and then they discard you, how to handle feeling beat up and thrown out. Well, maybe what I just said could help a little bit. If you had narcissistic parents, hijackal parents like I did, and you start to think about who were they really, would you choose them as friends? Would you actively go out and want those people in your life? Before my mother got ill, I would say to her, Mom, if I met you at a party, I would never suggest we have lunch. She just wasn't anybody I wanted to spend time with. And so it's important, Alchemy, for you to spend some time and say, yeah, I think that as a child, I probably always wanted to be wanted and loved and approved of, and all of those things. But if these people were not people, now that you're an adult, if they were people that you wouldn't have wanted in your life anyway because of the way they behaved, then you can begin as an adult to separate that out. That doesn't mean for a minute that you're not going to feel the sadness or the sorrow or the grief or the loss of not having had a parent in your life who nurtured and loved you just because you breathed. That's what we all deserve. But when you have a hijackal parent, they're going to withhold that. They don't have it to give, and if they did have it to give, they wouldn't give it to you anyway. So you begin to separate that out. Yes, I have the loss that I didn't have the parents that we see in the Hallmark movies. And I'll never have those parents. So that's a separate issue. But on the other side, maybe these are people I don't care for anyway. Maybe I don't like their behavior. I don't like the values they live from. I don't like the way they speak. I don't like the way they treat me and other human beings. I wouldn't choose them for my friends. And you can get some clarity in that direction. So you wrote, yes, their alchemy. Is that what you're meaning? Yes to that you could separate that out? And you could see those two things as distinct and separate possibilities. I hope that's true for you. Now you can see that this San Diego sunlight is coming around the corner here and changing the video lighting for sure. So we'll just have to let that happen because I am not in charge of the sun. So is this stuff making sense to you? Let's just have a yes in the yes or no, or what's your question in the chat so that I can know to move on, or if this is all making sense, or if you have a specific question. And if it doesn't on topic, it's okay. You could ask another question. Because we need to have these relationships in our life from going forward now that are equal, reciprocal, and mutual. And, certainly pick up a copy of Kaizen for Couples. Where is it? There it is. Kaizen for Couples. And learn these things. Hi, Brian. Yes, it's making sense. Good. Good. Because this book will give you everything you need to know about how to have healthy relationships. Any relationships. And chapters 5 and 6 on the personal weather report, absolute gold, everybody tells me. So you might want to pick that up tonight and give it a good read, because it will help you understand how to have a healthy relationship, what your part in it is, and how to avoid the pitfalls of unhealthy relationship. It also tells you how to solve problems, how to increase your communication and do things wildly. Okay, this is excellent, Alchemy. Great. Yeah, it's so important for us to have these strategies. That's why it's so important for us to have these times together. Be sure to invite your friends along and share this with them, because these are things they need to know. Maybe they've got a friend who behaves this way and they don't know what to do about it, and they start to think it's their fault. They need to come along and find out these things are not your fault. And a hijackal will always tell you everything is your fault, right? Hands up if you ever had that experience. A hijackal makes everything your fault, whether it's the weather or the IRS or whatever it is. It will always be your fault, because hijackals don't take responsibility for anything and they're accountable for nothing. Very frustrating, very annoying, very infuriating, but that's the way it rolls. So very important. So we have to stay out of being in the supply chain for these people. So we need to understand them. They need to have power and control over us. My definition of a hijackal is a person who hijacks a relationship for his or her own purposes, and then they daily scavenge it for power, status, and control. So if you've had a hijackal in your life, it's all about them, what they need, what they want, how they can use you, how they can take advantage of you, manipulate you, seduce you, exploit you. But in the beginning, not if they're your parents, but in the beginning, when you're in a potential romantic relationship with them, they behave as the perfect person that you could ever want. You believe that you've died and gone to heaven, that you've been given your soulmate. This person understands you so deeply. They get you on every level, and you're very excited about that. And then after they get you, and they maybe move in, or you marry, or you're pregnant, or whatever happens, all of a sudden they begin to be disinterested and start finding fault. And things go sideways and downhill from there. And this is what occurs in a romantic relationship. So that's why I was saying to Purple Belt earlier that when you start dating, if you can just keep your composure and be your pleasant, healthy self, make sure you've done your own work, and then you are there to say, how do I like this person, as opposed to, I wonder if they like me. You are on such better terms and on much more solid ground. Things will be better in that regard. Now, this is going to make really interesting video, being in this strange light. But of course, the sun will set in a moment. Okay, again, comments and questions down below. So when you are thinking about the relationship you're in, perhaps, and you know that you are being the supply, and you want to withdraw from being the supply, then you begin to withdraw, hopefully in a quiet way, because you never want to poke a hijackal. That never helps. That is never a good idea. So you start by simply saying things like, oh, that's not the way I see it. No, that's not the way I remember it. No, that wasn't what I said. You just start affirming things to yourself, but you can affirm them out loud without a whole lot of emotional charge, but you affirm them out loud so that the person is not thinking that you are accepting what they're saying. You're not making a big deal. You're not doing a lot of pushback. You're not being angry. You're not upset. You're not trying to have power over them or start a fight or anything. But you are simply stating, no, that's not the way I remember it. No, that's actually not what I think happened. No, that's not what I think. No, that's not what I feel. And you just start making statements like that. So Purple Belt, I thought my ex and I had so much in common, but my parents never saw these commonalities. That's interesting. So you thought that you had things in common. With your hindsight now, your wonderful hindsight, did you actually have things in common? Or were you constructing those things? Were you hoping those things? Or did he tell you those things and they weren't accurate? They weren't actually in place? With the hindsight, what actually happened? Were you love bombed so that he said all the right things and made you feel like you were the perfect partner? Or were you in denial? Or did he change his mind? That would be very interesting. But your parents never saw the commonalities. So did you defy your parents to marry the hijackal? Because sometimes we do that, right? Sometimes we do that. So for next week's live stream, I guess I'm going to have to remember daylight saving time and this new pattern of the sun, because this is going to be quite the strange lighting for this video. So we don't want to be wittingly the supply of another person. So we begin by stating the things as I said. That's not the way I remember it. That isn't what I meant. That isn't what I saw. That isn't what I felt. You just make those quiet, non-confrontative, but affirming statements. And you make them for yourself. Because you are no longer taking in and taking on what the hijackal said. And that becomes extremely important. Maybe I have a new use for my book. There we go. I do have a new use for my book. It now became a window shade. This is perfect. So if you are in a situation still with a hijackal, you want to have that opportunity to take and create that opportunity to be empowering yourself by saying these things. And then slowly back away. Take up more space. Affirm yourself. Then you move to, no, I believe the truth of that situation was this. And you just talk about it from your own point of view. You don't talk about it from theirs. You don't mention them. But you begin to empower yourself with that statement. And you'll learn more about that in Kaizen for Couples when you start using the personal weather report that's talked about in there. And that will help you move in a better direction. Now, there's also other help for you. Right now, you can still get in on the Optimized Circles, my membership program. And there are 3 levels of membership over there. Completely off Facebook, off any social media. It's all on my website. So it's very, very safe. And all the discussion forums are there. Work on software that's just like Facebook. So you can have the talking, you can make friends, you can do all the things that you do on social media. You can put up your photographs, you can do anything you want, but it's not on social media. And there are 3 levels. Now, the first level, I want to tell you about this because there's an upcoming webinar that you might want to be part of. So the first level of membership, you get the discussion forum and my 21 Steps to Empowered Emotional Savvy email program that comes over 6 weeks. Then the second level, you get that and the frequently asked questions library, which is about 150 questions that I've answered. And you get videos and articles, but you also get access to webinars. And at that second level, it's called the Learning Circle, you get access once a month to a private live webinar. And then at the third level, the growth level, you get all that plus 2 opportunities a month to be part of a group Ask Me Anything call. So you can ask me your questions directly for an hour in the group. And that way you can get a lot. Now, here's the deal. Right now, at any level, the first month is $5, just $5. Yes, you have to put in your credit card and say which level you're buying so that the next month it'll be the full fee. But right now, until we get 40 members, those fees are very low, even at their upgraded level. So right now, if you went and joined at optimizedcircles.com, you could be part of Wednesday's webinar, which is called Overwhelming the Impact of Having a Hijackal Parent, an hour-long webinar, very specific. You get it for only $5. So you might want to do that. Go over to optimizedcircles.com. Now, this whole business about the price, it will go up when we reach 40 members. This is all new. So if you go there now and you maintain your membership, you get it at that very low rate forever. But if you ever stop being a member and you come back in, then you have to pay the new price. So I hope that's helpful to you. Because that could be the very thing that you really need in-depth knowledge about, because the impact of having hijackal parents is huge. You know, there are little things wound around your soul that you may not even know about, never thought about, and you really need to know them so that you can overcome them or take them into account or take them off the ledger, so that they are no longer factoring into how you do life and what you think about relationships and life and success. So all very, very important things. So I've given you some ideas. You know, first of all, look at your responsibility. If you don't want to be part of supply, then don't be a person who is needy, codependent, wanting to be liked so much that you overlook things and you put up with things that you ought not to. The second thing, never see yourself as an object and never let anyone treat you as an object. The third is never to see yourself as an acquisition or be anyone allowed to treat you as an acquisition. And then the most important part is the 3 things you need to know about being in a healthy relationship. It must have equality. It must have reciprocity, and it particularly must have mutuality. And, as I said earlier, that mutuality allows you to magnify the attunement and responsiveness to each other. So you will talk, you will be in a safe place to be vulnerable. This person will hold your secrets and your vulnerabilities, and you will hold theirs, and you will know you're safe. In a hijackal relationship, one of the things that often happens is that you have a moment, a loving, close moment when you feel, oh, this is the way I always thought it was going to be. And so you share a vulnerability. And 4 days later, they're out in public and they make some snide comment about your vulnerability and they expose you completely. And it's completely one-upmanship. They just wanted to look good and make you look foolish. You ever had that happen in a relationship with a hijackal? If you had a hijackal parent, did you ever have them tell a story on you that mortifies you and they know very well how mortified you would feel? And yet they tell it because they want to be the ones who tell that. They want the glory. They want people to laugh. That's what happens when you have a hijackal parent. That's when you're part of their supply chain. And it's very difficult as a child to get away from being that supply because you don't know what's happening. Our brains grow until we're 25 to 30 years old. And the first 7 years of our life are very instrumental in what we settle into, what we've taken in before we even had language in the first 2 years of our life. That becomes the fabric of our being. I was working with a client today and we're finding the little places where things had settled into the crevices early in her life. Because we have to get those things. We have to find them and move them on out and replace them with healthy things. So these are all very important components. So I hope this has shed some light on why you don't want to be supply and how not to be supply. And if you are currently being supply, how to begin to think of ways to move away from that. I'm sure that's not why you were born, was to be the supply of other people. Even if you were born because your parents wanted supply, as an adult, you don't want to be that anymore, do you? I hope not, because it's not healthy. And I hope for you that you find ways to be in relationships that are equal and reciprocal and mutual, healthy ways of being. So are there any questions before we end tonight? I just give you 1 minute to put your questions or your comments there. And please, please make sure you've subscribed and do invite your friends. Come over and like my Facebook page. It's called Relationship Help Doctor. So facebook.com/Relationship Help Doctor. Like that page because I make all kinds of announcements over there. Come on in and be a member at optimizedcircles.com. Circles with an S.com, so that you can participate in Wednesday's webinar. And if you're listening to this long after the fact, that whole optimized circles thing, that's still there. Whether or not the pricing has changed is up to you, but it will always be $5 for the first month at every level so that you can see if it's what you want, to see if it suits you. So I see no more comments, no more questions, so I hope that this has helped you. I'd like a thumbs up in the chat if it has, if it's been useful to you, if it's affirmed or validated you in any way, and your thoughts and feelings about yourself and how you'd like your relationship to run. In general, you can come to work with me at any time, and you can find all of my work at my website for relationshiphelp.com, for relationshiphelp.com. I'm so glad you've been with me, as I said, and I look forward to having you visit with me next week and bring your friends. In the meantime, be strong, be nobody's supply, and take good care. Good night.